Seth to give us the audible signal on the big brass ship's bell here.
Okay, you doing all right, Mr. Hale?
It's great to be here.
Yeah, good to have you. Thanks for coming. You will be given 5 minutes to make your opening statement. And then, do you have any questions, Mr. Crittman? I know I prepared a couple questions.
Well, I may have one or two based on what Mr. Hale says in his opening remarks.
Okay. Yeah.
And maybe something from out of left field, who knows?
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and get started.
Then I have a couple questions that I'd like to ask, and then you'll be given time to make a close. So,
Number one, thank you for having me. This is my opening statement time.
no.
Oh,
So,
sorry.
but Seth has that little light right there, and I think if you watch that, green means go. Seth, blue, is that what you're going to do when he's almost at it?
Yeah.
Okay, then blue's the warning, and then red is stop.
Well, number one, thank you so much for having me, and it's an honor to be here. I think you just saw the totality of Congressman DesJarlais' decade in office and what just happened. Bill Zeckman called out, Congressman DesJarlais, are you here? And it was met with silence. For a decade, Congressman DesJarlais has answered silence to the question, are you here? The question that we get time and again across this campaign, the campaign I've held 133 events across 16 counties and 250 communities across the state, is where is Congressman DesJarlais? He stood up Bill Zeckman tonight, but more importantly, he stood you up. He stood Warren County up. During the greatest health and economic crisis in American history, the biggest vote in front of him from the United States Congress, a $3.2 trillion bill, the biggest bill in American history, 3 times bigger than the bailout that cost Congressman Davison's job a decade ago. Congressman DesJarlais also wasn't there. He was one of a handful of members of the United States Congress who did not vote on the biggest bill in American history. I'm different. I show up. I fight for my people. When I say I'm going to come to Bill's event, I come. When I say I'm going to be in a community, I'm there. I go to bar mitzvahs, I go to quinceañeras, I go to events, I go to town halls. Town halls, one that Congressman DesJarlais has yet to hold in this state in 7 years. World War II lasted longer, less. World War I lasted less. Congressman DesJarlais doesn't show up. I'm a lifelong Tennessean. I'm a native Tennessean. I've spent my career in public service, in small business, and in advocacy. I know how to make a payroll. I know how to fulfill promises. I know how to show up for my people. And tonight, to everyone who's listening here, I want you to know this is an important night. Because tonight, for the first time in a decade, to every Republican, you are going to vote for a Democrat for United States Congress. You are going to vote for a Democrat for United States Congress because unlike Scott DesJarlais, I show up. Congressman DesJarlais is not supported by more than a third of the Republican Party. There are Doug Meyer and Randy Sharp, Chris Hale voters. And you know what, Republicans? You can do better than Scott DesJarlais. If you like conservative values, if you have conservative values, there are better champions of conservative values than Scott DesJarlais. I'm sure Janice Bowling would love to be United States Congressman. She ran for the seat about 18 years ago, give or take. There's other folks in this community, Paul Sherrill, who might want to run for the seat. Maybe you should put them up instead because Congressman DesJarlais does not represent you. He does not represent the Christian conservative values that you care about. I'm a Christian. I'm a populist. I'm a Democrat. I'm not a socialist. I'm a Democrat who values bread and butter issues. I want to bring good jobs, living wages, rural hospitals, and health care back to rural Tennessee. I'm going to earn your vote. I'm going to win this election. And unlike my opponent, Congressman Scott DesJarlais, I will show up and fight for you.
All right. You got that in less than 5 minutes, so maybe we owe you a minute or two here.
We'll take as much as you can.
We'll put it on the back end. James, do you have a question?
Sure, I've got several questions. Okay, Mr. Hale, being a newspaper guy, obviously I'm really big on freedom of speech.
Sure.
Absolutely. Freedom of expression is a right that's enjoyed by all Americans, but hate speech is slightly different. and it's often used to incite violence. What are your thoughts on possible regulations on hate speech, especially online, or your thoughts on if this should be regulated at all?
Well, I think the First Amendment, the United States Constitution that gives us the First Amendment, the Supreme Court has said there is a wide provision of the First Amendment. I'm a constitutional conservative. I believe in the First Amendment. We should have the ability to have people say things that offend us, that are repugnant, that go against every sensibility that we have as Christians, as Americans, but we have to defend the right to say it. Men and women, women and men, our ancestors fought and died for the ability of Americans to say stupid things and to say idiotic things. And I will defend that to the nth degree. I believe in liberty. I believe in freedom. I believe in the right to have a marketplace of free ideas and let those play out. That being said, Facebook is controlled by corporate Valley, Silicon Valley elites who are infiltrating and taking over our dialogue in a way that's not healthy for citizens of this country. We can regulate what goes in the mail. We can regulate what goes on our television. I think we need to regulate the corporate leftists of Facebook. I think we should take them on. I wish Congressman DesJarlais would take them on. I think we should break up Facebook. I think we should have smaller competitive platforms. I think we should use the antitrust laws of this country to ensure that we actually have freedom of speech, that we actually have a marketplace of ideas, that we aren't controlled by big data, that we aren't controlled by California liberals, that we have the ability to have a free marketplace of ideas, that where the best ideas win, and the way we do that is by ensuring that the marketplace is fair and accessible to all.
Okay, James, you got another one? I'll have one if you need a little break. Or just go ahead with your question, Joe.
Okay, question 2. The federal government has largely taken a hands-off approach when it comes to COVID-19 regulation action to each individual state. Do you think the federal government has done enough to mitigate the spread of COVID-19?
No. The positivity rate in Grundy County today is 1 in 4. Janice Moley and I were in Grundy County this weekend in Colmont for an event, the unveiling of markers. There were some wearing masks, thank God. Not all were. Some should have been wearing masks. But the thing that we need to do, we're talking so much about mandates. What we need to talk about is accessibility. The issue that I have talked to about Tennesseans is a surprising number of Tennesseans do not have access to masks. The United States Postal Office, thank God for the thousands of postal workers here in Tennessee. The United States Post Office in April was going to deliver 5 masks to every citizen of this country. I'm pro-life. I think citizens should have masks. I think masks should be available to each and every citizen. So instead of talking about mandates, we need to talk about access to resources. The government told you and your businesses right here in Warren County to shut down. And thank God we had the PPP loan. The PPP loan that Congressman DesJarlais did not support. The PPP loan that in the middle of March when he opposed, the President of the United States said the men who opposed that bill were third-rate stooges. I agree with President Trump. Scott DesJarlais is a third-rate stooge. We need to ensure that resources are given to our people. We need a second PPP loan. We need to help pay for social distancing measures in businesses, and a new PPP loan should pay for that. Businesses have spent so much money abiding by the regulations of the federal government. We need to give them the resources to do so. I believe in freedom. I believe in capitalism. But when the government shuts you down, the government should pay the cost of shutting you down.
Okay. I'll tell you what, I think James may have another question.
Go ahead.
Okay, if you've got another, let me go ahead and get this in. 5 minutes is a terribly short time for a candidate for Congress to lay out his or her platform and agenda, but let's take a look at what is registering as the most important issues for American voters going into this November 2020 election. The Gallup organization, highly respected and experienced in the polling on that, and they asked respondents, is this issue extremely important to you, or is it very important to you? And they drew that distinction. little line of demarcation between the two. But then they combined the responses for extremely important with very important. So you have the top two responses in terms of intensity. Number one, when you do that combination with 84% responding extremely important or very important, 84% said the economy falls in that category, but it's followed closely, right on the heels of that, by education, 83%. After that comes healthcare, 81%. And then in fourth place, with 80%, terrorism and national security. So right now, if you combine extremely important and very important, the economy is the key issue, but right after that is education. Can you take just a few seconds and talk to us about your agenda for education?
Well, number one, we need to fully fund public schools. It is absurd. A lot of people have opinions about their local school boards, right? So, and let me be on the record. There are some crazy people who are elected to local school boards, and we know them by name. I've met them in the flesh. But school boards are having impossible decisions to make in terms of reopening schools safely because the government has not provided resources for them to open safely. Once again, the government has put guidelines in place for how schools ought to open. The government has not provided the security for teachers in the workplace. The government should foot the bill. Public schools are a creation of the community. We pay for public schools. Public dollars should pay for public education. But you know what? It can't simply be the state, the local communities. Property taxes are not a worthwhile and long sustainable means of funding public school. The federal government is a great means of public school funding. I even think Janice Bowling would agree with me on that. You can't put all the pressure on the state and local municipalities to ensure that public schools are funded. The federal government has got to step up. But I want to note that you raised three issues: the economy, healthcare, and education. COVID-19 has killed 2,300 Tennesseans, but it has cost thousands and tens of thousands of Tennessee jobs. It destroyed lives and livelihoods. For 70 days, Congressman DesJarlais knew this virus was coming to destroy our lives and our livelihoods. He did nothing to stop it. And after the virus came, as President Trump agreed, he did little to help us. I will help defeat this virus. I will ensure we get our kids back to schools, that we can pray safely in our churches, and that our communities and our jobs are back here in Tennessee.
Okay, thank you, James. Back to you.
Okay, I have one more question, and it's about gun control. We were talking over to the side before this started about how some good things have emerged from this pandemic, and I guess one good thing is not so many people are getting gunned down in the streets the way they used to be, so there's that. But there has been talk about the federal government buying back some assault weapons. What are your views on this?
So to me, any law-abiding Tennessean should be able to own a gun. I'm not here to steal your guns. I'm here to give you good jobs. I'm not here to take away your guns. I'm here to give good jobs in education, healthcare, and living wages. The only people who should not have guns in Tennessee are people like Scott DesJarlais. Scott DesJarlais admitted in a court of law that he abused his wife with a gun. He threatened her with a gun. He dry fired it 6 feet from her head. He stuck it in his mouth for 3 hours. He threatened to take his life, and then he was belligerent to the police in Marion County. Under Chris Hale's America, law-abiding citizens, law-abiding Tennesseans can have guns. Domestic abusers cannot. I think law-abiding citizens should own guns, but those who threaten their wives, who don't know how to use guns properly, should not. That's why tens of thousands of Trump Hale voters are across Tennessee voting for me, because they know that I'm a different type of Democrat. I'm not controlled by Nancy Pelosi or Joe Biden. I'm controlled by the values of you and your family. Congressman DesJarlais is not. I'm a Christian, pro-life, political outsider who believes that the values of Tennessee should be the values we take to Washington. Congressman DesJarlais from South Dakota is not like us.
Just one real quick follow-up on the gun issue. Do you make a distinction between guns in general and fully
So to me, once again, law-abiding citizens should be able to own guns. I think the first thing we need to talk about, though, is background checks and ensuring those who do not abide by the rule of law do not have guns. I'm a law and order Democrat, folks. I believe in law and order. I think that we should impose the laws in the books, and we have not done that well. I think the laws in the books should ensure that criminals do not have weapons, but I also think that we need to make sure we have the background checks in place to ensure criminals do not have weapons. There are thousands of criminals in our streets, thugs who have guns in Tennessee who should not have guns because our government does not implement the laws in the books. We cannot get caught up in the thick of thin things. Let's get back to basics. Let's ensure that law and order is the rule of the law, is the practice of here in Tennessee. And the way we do that is implement background checks to ensure criminals and domestic abusers like Congressman DesJarlais do not have guns.
Okay, James, do you have anything else?
No, I think that does it for me.
Well, thank you, Chris Hale. Thank you so much. Let's go to your 2-minute closing statement.
I'm a fighter. I'm a fighter who tells the truth. I'm a fighter who's not beholden to the old ways of doing things. I'm a young man who has energy, who has charisma, has the mind, the intellect, the heart, the competence, and the courage to win this seat. We have nearly 6,000 donors. We outraised Congressman DesJarlais by a 5-to-1 margin, and that was fueled by the average donation of $32. But we out-organized him 100-to-1. I'm going to end this campaign like I've lived my life. On the road, close to you and your families, seeking converts, and fighting for those who have been left out of the political system altogether. There are 249 precincts in this congressional district. I'm stepping foot in all of them. A young man named Lamar Alexander was a Republican running in one of the most democratic states in this country. And he walked from Mountain City to Memphis as a man in his 30s and became the youngest elected governor of this state. I am going to do the same. I am going to walk from Colioca to Spring City, and I am going to win over each and every Republican I encounter. The establishment is terrified of me. But you know what? In the office of the Republican Party, there isn't a Scott DesJarlais side. There's a hell yes side. Because the people who know me, even the Republicans who know me, they admire my fight. They admire my energy. They know that I will fight for them. I am not beholden to Joe Biden or Donald Trump or Nancy Pelosi or Kevin McCarthy. I am only beholden to you and your family. So folks, I promise you at the beginning, every Republican in this room, I'm going to win your vote because you know what? I show up and Congressman DesJarlais does not. In 29 days, through the grace of God and through the means of a free and fair election, you are looking at your next congressman. Thank you for having me.